Over $10 billion burned to ashes in a couple of days after thousands of computer screens turned black in quick succession in Ukraine in 2017. Russian cybercriminals were having a busy day. Within some hours, the hack that started as a ransomware attack would cripple all the critical sectors across top economies of the world. NotPetya was everywhere. Perhaps that's why someone has said, if something is free, you are not the customer, you are the product. But I would like to take it a bit further. Even if you pay for an online service, you are still nothing more than a product. In 2001, almost 6 people faced cyber attacks every hour. Now, this number has been increased all the way up to 97. The monetary losses from these cyber attacks were only $0.86 trillion in 2018. Now, this number has been increased all the way up to $9.2 trillion in 2024. And this is only gonna rise in upcoming times, with the estimated losses in 2028 reaching up to $13.8 trillion. The truth is, when you think you are using the internet in a closed room, there are ultimate bosses who are constantly pulling the strings to manipulate your actions. A vast majority of top companies with best cybersecurity systems in place and holding sensitive information of billions of humans are increasingly facing cyber attacks in recent times. And that pushes all of us under some sort of attack. There is absolutely no country in the whole world that is safe from these crises. Asia Pacific, Europe, and North America are usually battling for the top place in this unfortunate ranking every year since 2020, followed by Latin America and the Middle East. And no sector is safe from these attacks at all. Let's take cyber attacks on airport systems as an example. While data leakage is an obvious thing out of these attacks, airport cyber attacks can end up delaying flights and essentially crumbling all the systems within a matter of minutes.
We now know the major internet outage that hit SeaTac Airport 2 days ago was a cyber attack.
On Saturday morning, we noted what we believe to be a cyber attack.
According to FlightAware, there were more than 400 delays and canceled flights over the weekend. The cyber attack impacted several systems. Ticket agents handling international flights had to issue tickets by hand, leading to long lines.
Or in hospitals where notorious cyber criminals demand ransomware after striking on critical facilities like blood transfusion services, test results, and operations. In the United Kingdom, a cyber attack on a hospital delayed critical medical operations and patients were sent back home just before the start of their important procedures.
And we start with breaking news this hour. A number of procedures have been cancelled or redirected to other NHS providers following a cyber attack on some of London's major hospitals.
Or even when you book your hotels with top apps like Booking.com, where cyber criminals could be ready to get your accounts cleaned in a matter of minutes. A new cyber attack scam has been making rounds in recent times, where malicious cyber elements would attack the admin accounts of hotels on the Booking.com to gain access to their system and eventually to the confidential information of all the clients staying in that hotel. So for example, you get a booking with Hotel A and it has weak admin passwords or is exposed to any other security vulnerability. Hackers can easily penetrate into their system to steal your important information. And you can absolutely not do anything about it, since you never know which hotel accounts are prone to hacking. And even worse is when hackers start communication with you within the messaging system of the compromised hotel in the Booking.com platform and ask you to process the payment on a link that is actually a phishing attempt to hack your cards. You end up entering your personal information on that link and unknowingly provide your sensitive data to scammers. But what about the most used daily online applications like third-party payment processors such as PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, Payoneer, or even credit cards? Everything seems to be at a big risk. For example, almost 35,000 PayPal accounts were compromised in late 2022 over a period of 2 days. Or in another case where the information of almost 1.7 million credit cards were compromised when the electronic payment gateway Slim CD faced a massive cyber attack. This attack exposed critical details such as credit card numbers, expiration dates, names, and addresses of millions of Americans and Canadians. Even worse happened in Argentina, where a large number of accounts of a renowned financial application, Payoneer, were hacked despite having two-factor authentication. The worst part of all this is that the personal information of millions of people can be at risk just because of a security vulnerability of one employee of a company. even when the employee belongs to some third party software company that the targeted firm is using. For example, in 2013, Target became the victim of a notorious cyber attack when almost 40 million credit and debit card records were stolen. The hackers sneaked into the Target records through a computer of an employee of a third party software. Or perhaps the worst type of cyber attacks humanity can think of, the cyber attack to make our drinking water contaminated or at times even unavailable. Now, this type of cyber attack could be so devastating that it could have dangerous implications for the lives of millions of people. Obviously, few people think twice before drinking tap water if they are already routinely using it. Even a bit of contamination in these facilities will have implications for millions of families. And the situation gets even worse with the warning of the Environmental Protection Agency, which says that 70% of inspected water utilities in the United States failed to meet basic cybersecurity standards in recent times. I can go on for hours and hours naming all the cyber attacks that disrupted the world in recent years. The truth is, most of the critical cyber attacks go unnoticed because companies spend top dollars in their PR to keep them away from the headlines in order to protect their reputation. So it's even hard to imagine what is the current scale of cyber attacks and what the future holds. I mean, we have been there in the past where companies would just make hidden payments to the hackers to get their systems restored or just hide the cyber attack episode under the wraps without making any payment. But the most important question remains, how can cybercriminals manage to orchestrate all these attacks despite the technological might and the resources, all by the side of the governments? And why have governments themselves fallen victim to some of the most notorious cyber attacks? Take the example of solar wind hack, for instance, which resulted in unprecedented data breaches from some of the top US government departments.
The American officials say that Russia is likely responsible for hacking 18,000 government and private organizations, including the U.S. Department of Justice, Treasury, State, and Homeland Security.
While no one can fully predict the exact methods cybercriminals use today, here are some patterns of how they operate. First, cybercriminals hide in the shadows of the dark web, a space that is largely unregulated by any government. In fact, almost all the data they steal during their sophisticated attacks ends up being sold on the dark web. Second, they use a chain of VPNs, also known as VPN chaining, which makes it nearly impossible for governments to catch them. Tracing even one high-end VPN is a big ask, and when they layer it with multiple VPNs, it essentially becomes impossible to track. Now, most of you would probably know that cybercriminals often demand ransom payments in cryptocurrency, which makes their tracing impossible. But the most effective and powerful weapon of cybercriminals is geography. An overwhelming number of cybercriminals do not operate independently but are instead backed by different governments to conduct cyber attacks against the political and economic adversaries of the host country. Now, this is essentially the bottom line since they get access to all the critical government infrastructure to conduct cyber attacks that become impossible to stop. And in many cases, hackers just continue to develop so-called innovative ways to conduct their operations much faster than the governments trying to protect themselves. That is what former director of the United States CyberSecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency had to say.
Einstein is really a fundamental security program for the federal government that is designed to detect known threats. This was not a known threat. This was a novel technique, a novel path, never seen before.
Or at times, the hackers use the human beings present within the critical systems by bribing them to get whatever they want. And the sad reality is that government-backed cyber attacks are only going to rise. Now, governments have realized that the most powerful weapon they can possess against their adversaries is cyber warfare, and this can lead to dangerous things.
Yeah, there is a growing list of cyber armies coming online around the world. Not all of them are friends, but it continues the country practice of gaining intelligence and espionage.
When cyber attacks are directed at critical facilities like water systems, the motives are indeed sinister. But what do you have to lose at an individual level if your personal information is stolen in any cyber attack? Most cyber attacks against the general citizens are conducted to steal their personal data such as names, addresses, tax identification numbers, social security numbers, date of birth, and other stuff like that. When such credentials are stolen, hackers can end up committing employment fraud, stealing medical records, do tax frauds, or even set up fake bank accounts in the name of the victim for money laundering purposes. With all these cyber attacks in action, do you really stand a chance to protect your online identity and eventually avoid facing the frauds? Or is this a new and harsh reality that we must embrace and surrender? Well, in general, all of us are part of the broader system, and when the governments and top companies are being targeted, it puts all of us under some sort of attack. That literally means we can do nothing to save our data until or unless you are willing to throw all your devices away and shift to a remote island with no internet access. But there are still some things you can do individually that will make you safer and protect against most cyber attacks happening today. First is to never connect with a public Wi-Fi, and if you do, make sure not to conduct any financial transaction or even open a banking app. This is because you do not have any control over the security of the public Wi-Fi's and your data may not be encrypted. If you still have to carry out financial transactions on a public network, try connecting to a reliable VPN which will make your data encrypted. Second, set strong passwords of all your accounts and try to make all of them different from each other. The best way to keep all your online accounts secure is to use long and unpredictable combinations that are hard to guess and break with even top-notch brute force attacks. Keep a close eye on the health of all your passwords and never ignore any warning. Next is to keep all your devices updated. Older versions of any software or application are prone to hacking since the developers start directing all their resources on the newer version, which makes these older versions a perfect entry point for hackers. Think twice before clicking on any random link on the internet. This includes even downloading untrustable images such as PNGs or even PDFs. Never run executable files from untrusted sources as they can easily crumble your computers within minutes. Also, do not forget to close all your old and unused accounts anywhere on the internet. You may have put weaker passwords on them somewhere in the past, and hackers are always looking for such accounts that could give them even a blurred picture of your identity. This way, they can collect a bit of information about you from here and there to construct a fairly reasonable profile that could make you a potential target of their attacks somewhere in the future. Only post those things on the internet that you can afford to make public, even in the most secret places on the web. That's because once you have posted something, it's next to impossible to fully delete it from the internet. Another important way to keep your personal information safe is just not trust anyone on the internet. All the scams happening on dating and marriage websites have made the internet less safer than ever. And with the rise of artificial intelligence and robots coming closer to pass the Turing test, you just cannot even tell at times that the person sitting at the other side of the screen is a real human or not. Most importantly, communicate all these tips with your family members, friends, and especially children who are always the top victim of malicious elements out there.
My name is Ahmed and you were watching Decode. Do not forget to subscribe to the channels to get latest updates on all the top-notch documentaries coming your way. Till next Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm signing out.